Welcome to our Generation AI podcast, where we demystify artificial intelligence for us, higher education professionals. I am JC Bonilla, joined by my awesome boss, friend, and co-host, Artis Kadui. How you doing, pal?
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
All good. Halfway through January. Shit, time flies.
It goes by really quick, yes. And there's just so much that has happened and so much that's going to happen over the next, couple of weeks here in January as we round up the month.
Are you into New Year resolutions? Are you one of those? Or you basically just, change that page of the calendar and like keep on going? Where are you at with New Year resolutions?
So I don't usually do New Year's resolutions, and it's an interesting time, January, for me, because it's all of the December kind of anticipation of, it's like, hey, I'm going to do this next year, or this is a next year thing. And then January is that, wake up alarms. It's like, hey, the year is here already. You have 12 months. The time has started. So now the anxiety of it's like, oh shit, time is going by. Whereas in December, it's like it's like, oh, time hasn't started yet. So I still have the time to, like when time starts. So it's just a mindset thing. So it's like as January starts, you probably see me into a little bit more of a shit, we got to get going. It's like more go. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we've seen it. And the teams are feeling it. So I one of the things that I like January, right, is whether you're into New Year resolutions or not, then, if there's an optimism starting the year, and to your point, go goes in. So 2 weeks in, it's an opportunity to start looking at the relation between signal to noise, like all these things. I want to, I don't know, hit the gym or lose weight, drink less, drink more, whatever is happening. Within 2 weeks, things have settled. And I always like to have the opportunity to really understand what needs to change, what goes differently and not. So it's a calibration of the year. So with that, we wanted to bring that vibe of calibration of the year with the idea of New Year resolutions, if you will, under the lens of Generation AI. So what does that mean? The year 2025 is a year of mainstream adoption of AI. So we know, artists, that we've been talking about this kind of playground of AI, it's exciting tools, ChatGPT doing, 12 drops and our prior chapter, like all these exciting things. But what we know, there's something very tangible ahead of us. AI becoming the standard for automation and workflows, co-pilots driving our customer experiences. The workplace, it's will be dominated by AI applications. We hear from Salesforces of the world to Elements of the world, where the digital worker now has its place, aka AI agents. So what we really know is it's an opportunity for us to come and do this. What does it mean to you, the user, the human, to become an AI expert as your new resolution? And we thought it could be a really fun way to calibrate with the year, that if that was in your remit of the new year or not, then introduce it or calibrate against our thinking of how you should do it. So in other words, if you are a leader doing AI, or if you're a person who is aspirational about AI, this episode is for you. How do we start thinking about creating mastery as an individual contributor or as a person who champion, leader, orchestrates all these things? So, artists, your app for this kind of human aspect of how do I bring AI into my life and make it a priority for 2025? You game for this episode?
Oh yeah, I love this type of episode. I think this is one of my favorites because it's one of those, like, I love professional development. I love the forward-looking kind of what you need to do, kind of progress before perfection, learners before masters. Those are like some of the core values that we have here at Element, and just like the beginning of a new school year, the beginning of the year is really like when you work on yourself and when you work on big ideas and when you work on kind of this plan and you have the time to kind of upskill and retool and start thinking about how you're going to do that. So this is my favorite, one of my favorite episodes. I'm glad that we're going to talk about AI literacy and mastery for individual contributors and also for leaders and team managers and kind of organizations as well. So where do you want to go?
Let's start with the foundational building block, right? Before you're a leader, you're an individual contributor. So we're going to speak of you, the person, the human who wants to crush AI, and you are an individual contributor. Obviously, we need to talk about the skill, right, as a key. You need to have the fluency on the tools, right? And we have a very special episode coming up on the tools for the year. But right now, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and fully understanding how these impact my life professionally and my life non-work is a must. So that fluency and understanding the tools, it's basically the most core foundational aspect. Artist, what's your reaction to fluency on three things? ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini is how we start this conversation.
Correct. So you need to have a, one or two or even three. I use all three of the platforms right now, but you need to have a general purpose AI platform that you're using or an assistant, general purpose assistant that you're using. And those assistants are ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. So either one of those three platforms, you need to start using that. Of course, you can think about Copilot as well. And if you're in Microsoft land or your institution has purchased Copilot seats, but those three are the ones that we see quite a bit, and they're the most advanced ones. You need to start using it every day. This is part of the foundational skill development. And if you don't know how to use them, you should start today. There's a lot of really good material out there on YouTube or in other places. Start thinking about it. The thing is that don't just learn how to prompt, right? And this idea of learn how to problem solve using AI in your specific kind of vertical. So if you're in marketing, you need to start thinking about how do I use AI to kind of build the workflows that I'm doing every single day, and how do I solve problems with it. So prompt engineering has really evolved, and it's less about the specific prompts. So you're not going to go on the website anymore and say, hey, give me a prompt for how do I build a marketing campaign or so on and so forth, because a lot of the AI today is about the context and the framing of the outcomes that you put around it. So it's unique to your institution. It's going to be unique to the problems and the context that you provide to that prompt on how to do something. And these AI tools have evolved to become much more than just a prompting, kind of a raw one-to-one. You don't need to do the prompting techniques as much as you used to last year. So last year we talked about prompt engineering quite a bit as one of the skills. This year is about how do you make sure that you are doing problem solving and bringing the context and the framing around the job that you're doing in these tools.
So our first skill development tidbit for you is you must have AI fluency on at least one application. As far as me, I use two, ChatGPT and Claude. What I find myself is I switch to Claude. Obviously, ChatGPT is about 80% of the time how I spend it. And that 20% is when I'm looking for depth of writing. I just find Claude to be a better tool for me in terms of AI when I need to be thoughtful in the writing and lengthier, right? But emails and that kind of transactional stuff, planning, coding, analysis, ChatGPT is the choice for me. Where do you find yourself switching between ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini?
So ChatGPT, I have the desktop application of ChatGPT. So it's the one that I always go to if I want to copy a text, or if I want to take a screenshot, or if I want to essentially I'm working with something on my desktop and I want to go to ChatGPT. Claude is mostly around again the writing. I have this mega prompts, or I have this kind of workflows that I have built around our podcast, for example,
Yes.
writing components that I have built around emails and things like that I use Claude quite a bit for. So those are the two. And then I'm starting to use Gemini now more and more, because with the introduction of Gemini 2.0, tightly integrated with real-time search. So it's really good, but also they've introduced a couple other components in there, like the deep research, which was, if you have a paid version of it, it's amazing. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But this notion of deep research, there's a version of Gemini that you use, and again, incredible. There's different output that you get out of that. So, and when I need to kind of send data directly to like a Google Doc or Google Sheets or something like that, I tend to use Gemini for that, because it does some research, it pulls data directly, and then I can connect it and set it up directly with Google Sheets.
All right. Well, it's a good segue to introduce our second point. Once you built on a tool of choice, AI fluency via tool, the next dimensionality in terms of being AI 25 master, it's your adoption and your thinking towards not standalone tools, but as Artie said, is how you bring AI integrations and workflow to you, right? The things that you do, the things that you're always working on. So for example, this podcast, we run it through Notion, right? So how do we start thinking about all this orchestration of prompts or mega prompts, so that the knowledge generation, the scripts that we do are Notion compatible? So I like everyone to start thinking about, as part of my remit in AI fluency, the tool needs to have processes of workflow automation and productivity enhancers. It's literally what we need to start thinking about. Artists?
Yeah, so I mean, you can call them agents right now, but specific tools are getting built that are wiring together a whole bunch of the things that you need to do separately, right? So it's from note taking to kind of audio generation to kind of email writing. So a lot of these specialized tools are wiring together these workflows. So if you are in a specific area, and we're going to talk about tools later on, but you have to start adopting these tools, or you start wiring them together. So no longer can you just use ChatGPT. You might have to send that output of ChatGPT to something else, and then that something else can kind of iterate over it and generate other output, and so on and so forth. So this is the time where, as an individual contributor, it's not just enough to get an output from ChatGPT and then have that be the final outcome of the work. You have to wire that. You have to edit it. You have to produce work that is production ready, and you need to put your own vertical or your own expertise and your own field. You have to make that your own, so to speak.
100%. What you're saying is, look, people talk about agents, right? People talk about orchestrating and creating workflows. But, I work in healthcare. So the way you pass a client to another person, it's not the same thing as doing it for a dentist or customer experience retail, right? Or accounting or higher education. So that's where your domain expertise and your specific point of view makes these building blocks of the skill of the tool into the agent aspects, because agents are domain specific, and the integrations with workflows, which is basically our point, is domain specific.
Correct. So like Element 451 AI assistants is like you can use our AI assistants to build marketing campaigns, to catch up on your day-to-day work, to do all those things, and that's in Element right now. So that's an agent, that's a specific AI tool or build for you. If you're a writer and you use, like, let's say, Jasper as a platform for writing, Jasper has now evolved from hey, here's a prompt and get me an email, to, oh, you can actually do the research. You can, you can add the context copy in there. It goes through the tone and voice, and you can do a lot of different things. And so these specialized tools are becoming more and more relevant. All right, so let's move to the next one. Kind of staying updated on all this stuff. How do we do it? Like,
Look, this is the part that will continue to be a 2025, 2026 things. The technology is advancing. Just think about agents. You know, how many software vendors and partners are trying to crack the aspect of how you create an agent via user experience and interface that allows you to flow through the context of what we're just talking about. And all of a sudden, like Relevance AI or many other players come and say, this is how we do it. You must stay up to date. And it is clear that podcasts, newsletters, industry blogs is where this is going to be going. But really important, what I want to remind you all is that there's no one data source, meaning a podcast or newsletter or industry blog that covers it all. So this is the year where I recommend you start curating your lists and just basically stay there. Awesome recommendations that we've had. The AI breakdown, the MIT technical reviews, and OpenAI updates to get started. But this podcast and probably 100 other podcasts have variations in depth.
hey, I have a bias around this podcast.
Of course, but think about, speaking of biases, think about how we translate things that happened on OpenAI through the lens of edtech, because that's how we are, right? And then many other things, technologies will have their own perspectives. So you need to start creating your niche in curating your consumption. But keeping up to date, it's a must. And I guess my point is you need to start broad and curate that list and just stay on top of it, stay on top of it, stay on top of it.
Yeah, we're focusing quite a bit on AI and technology and Enrollify in 2025, and that's going to be one of the key drivers. So around programming and use cases and how we think about. So it's going to be, we're kind of moving towards that. Of course, there's going to be a lot more content around it. So stay up to date with Enrollify network. Obviously, this is part of Generation AI is part of the Enrollify. It is a selfish plug, but it's going to be really important. So we're going to have a lot more of that learning content.
That's exactly the example I was telling you, right? So the Enrollify network is a great place for you to get all things AI that pushes AI through the guardrails of educational technology, higher education, because that's what we do. But if that's not your jam, find other places.
Right, exactly.
Artists, just to calibrate, you and I are considered AI experts. And I am particularly putting maybe almost an hour a day keeping up with all things AI, right? And some days I do less, some days I may do more, but on average about an hour. How much time daily or weekly do you invest in this point, staying updated?
So if you think about daily, I would spend about 2 to 3 hours a day consuming content. And this is, maybe an hour and a half in the morning. I would say during the day as I'm reading or consuming other things, another hour. And then as I'm walking or as I'm doing some other exercise, something else, another hour. So it's about 2 to 3 hours a day. And of course, social is really important to me. So I spend a lot of time there. So I kind of consume a lot of that. So weekly, obviously 20 hours plus in terms of consuming content, but I need to be on top of this. Like I consume a lot of content, and that's AI specific content I'm talking about. Like for example, today, my YouTube feed recommendations are all content that goes from deep learning, and it's like, Karpathy's, how to build an LLM, type of talks, to AI automation with agents, to going to like Bloomberg, talks with some leaders on what's the future, what's happening in 2025, to like podcasts that are coming in from things like All In Podcast they talk about. So all of that stuff is all in my YouTube feed. And like the weekend is actually a really good time where I tend to spend a little bit more around that. Of course, not everybody has that kind of time, or that's not your primary job. So certainly keeping on top of it and practicing is probably a little bit more important than keeping on top of the news, right?
So to wrap up this first segment, as an AI individual contributor, to keep up and make this your mastery for 2025, three fundamental things. Going backwards, you need to be invested between an hour to 3 hours a day to keep up, and you're barely keeping up. Number two, you need to start getting experimental and building agents in your workflow. But if you do not have our number one, which is a tool of choice, ChatGPT, Claude, and your style and how you switch, you really need to start cracking on those things ASAP.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because the aspiration is that not only are you going to be a contributor, but you're actually running teams. And there's this whole proliferation of education, AI strategy, and universities are getting super clever on how they package this programming and how you can invest on that. But what we like to react is, if you have these three things, now you should be able to run teams. If you do not have these three things, we cautious you to basically become an AI champion orchestrator, because there'll be some guardrails. So let's just assume that this is a cumulative knowledge, right? You have it, now you can start running the teams. The first thing that we like to remind you to be an AI champion, an orchestrator, is that puts you in a place of leadership, because AI in leadership, right? Intent, strategic management, whatever you want to call it today, are literally taking place in the same sentence. Just not long ago, you and I are talking to all these presidents and deans. How should I think about AI, right? So think about not only an orchestrator, right? AI technical person, but know that leadership tone sets that aspect of AI, which then brings me to the most important thing about leadership in AI, it's adoption. Just thinking AI and talking about AI will not be enough. But as a leader, the best and most important KPI for you is how much of the AI I produce, whether it's sophisticated or simple lame duck, I don't know, GPT, customization and GPTs, they must be used. And adoption is our number one KPI. We can talk all about AI, but if people don't use it, it doesn't matter.
I agree with that. And I really like that word orchestrator. In 2024, it was about literacy. It's like, how do you learn about it and talk about it and think about like putting policies in place and so on and so forth. 2025 is when AI is actually delivering enterprise value, when it's delivering value to our institutions, to our programs, to the work, our teams that we do. So AI is, again, kind of this vehicle for which we are gaining value and we're producing value, that being through efficiency gains, right? So it's like, how do we take a process and we make it more efficient, to, staff augmentation, to fully having digital teams that are doing the work, one person doing the work of 10, and how do we think about, doing a lot more with a lot less, right? That's the whole idea here. So 2025 is all going to be, how do we deliver value through AI? And the orchestrator is really that person who understands how the dots get connected, or how the output and the outcomes and what that workflow is all about, and how to put those pieces in place, and then just replace the human components or the manual components that are in between with the AI components, and now you have a much more efficient workflow in there. So orchestrator, I really, really like that word, to be honest.
So to orchestrate and be a leader in AI, our first point is your metric of success will be adoption.
Adoption. Yep.
But a corollary that is really, really important to be successful in adoption, you must crush the one-on-one of change management. It's crucial for you to understand that as you start pushing AI, sophisticated AI, simple AI, agentic systems, whatever you want to call your AI of the year, your teams are going to go through digital transformation. They're going to go through the anxiety of change and what it means to them. So must be fluent in change management. It is crucial for you to land that. Artists, you're an expert in change management because you start the day pushing teams on the future. What are your words of advice for a leader, I guess, what is a one-on-one on change management from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from change management perspective, I feel there's going to be a lot of pushback, and the way to think about change management in the in 2025 is how can we rethink the things that we're doing from kind of a first principles approach, rather than how do we do the same thing that we're doing right now, but with AI, right? Because that is not the where we're going to gain the value. So change management is going to be about, can we look at this outcome, or can we look at this problem from a AI first perspective, where we can do a lot more. So that's the part that I'm thinking about. Change management is about people adopting technology, and the most critical path to adoption is going to be change management and people. So technology is here. We have all the tools. We have all the platforms. It's like, how do we get the people and the organizations to adopt it? And your job as a leader and AI champion is, how do you convince somebody that there is real value to the adoption of this new technology? And you need to start thinking about showing that value by experimentation, by actually doing things and showing examples, rather than thinking about grand, like grand, massive projects that, hey, we're going to have our strategic plan on how we're going to adopt AI, and then 6 months later, all you have is is kind of a plan. That's it. Like, you haven't really done anything yet. So that's going to be the biggest mind shift, to be honest, that is going to be important around change management, is incremental change versus planning. Planning is important, but is not going to deliver the outcomes, and it's going to slow things down.
We speak of hallucinations in AI, and one of the biggest hallucinations as a leader that you can introduce is that your AI, it's a plan as opposed to introduce it. So our second point here, which Art has already brought up, is you need to start bringing this mindset of first principles. And what that really means practically is you need to rethink the workflows, because if you listen to us AI experts, we know that the biggest payout in AI and the impact that it's going to have is in automating your processes. But the biggest mistake that you can have as a leader is like, okay, think about us, Element, right? So I'm going to give you an Element example that it translates to a lot of higher education professionals, right? I need to get more emails out, right? Because this is how we get university leaders to attend meetings and look at our awesome product, Element, right? So let's automate emails. Like, no. From a first principle point of view, is what I need to generate is more demand, more eyeballs coming to these demos. And so somehow today, email, it's an outbound technique to get people to come and say, fine, I'm going to register, I'll do it. So it's not about automating emails. It's trying to think about what is the process that I'm trying to automate, and the function, the role is not being replaced. It's not that I'm getting rid of the email sender. It's just that, oh, I have an opportunity to think about, I need to get more humans to look and book at these demos, right? Book demos. And how do we automate that process?
Can I give an example for on higher education? And this is an actual product at AI. So and it goes counterintuitive as we've been having conversations with folks. So lead generation, right? Lead generation is all about how, like, you get measured by how many contacts or how many leads you have.
Prospects, you generate. You have in your database,
right?
Yeah.
So a vendor and an agency, and we work with a lot of agencies. Their KPI is, and their value is, like, how many leads did I generate for you? Essentially, or the goal is to get as many leads as possible, because the assumption is that those leads are going to convert into applicants, those are going to convert into students. But the lead itself has no value until that converts into a student. So now the incentive is for agencies or for whoever is to drive many leads. But from a customer experience perspective, that student that goes into that website, they don't fill out a form because they want to talk to somebody or because they get an email, they want to have a phone call 2 days later, or they want to be bombarded by emails that probably have nothing to do with what they're studying or what they have a question about. They would rather have their answers answered in real time as part of a conversation or as part of, they're kind of going to the website and they have a question, they're going to ask that question. So now we built this generative AI conversations or chatbot or chat or AI assistants, or even Discovery, which is our Gen AI search, website search. And somebody can get those answers right away from that, but they're not filling in a form. So we see an inverse correlation between the metric or the KPI, which is lead generation, goes down. However, the consumer is actually getting a better experience with a brand. They're getting a better experience. They're getting the answers that they need, and they're better qualified when they're moving through the process, and they can move faster through the application and through the process because they're getting their answers a lot faster. So this is a very different perspective on how you're supposed to start thinking about these workflows and AI, kind of that first principles, right? It's a little bit different than we were used to before. It's like, how do we optimize what we already have in place? This gives it, provides it a little bit different perspective on it.
100%. Thanks for that example. Moving along, our third recommendation for an AI champion and orchestrator, it's how you should start thinking about data and your knowledge sources as not the fear, the siloed approach of this is my data and that's your data, but literally the interconnectivity and the impact that you're going to have in AI deployment is proportionally correlated to the amount of data sources that you're able to intertwine. And from a technology point of view, that problem has been solved. Financial aid data finally is able to talk to enrollment outcomes, enrollment management, and co-curricular activities. That problem is being solved. And today, as a leader, like, oh my gosh, I can never connect it. It's not clean. They own it. It's siloed. That type of mindset, it's not a 2025 mindset. And more importantly, as an AI leader, you would fail if you just stayed within the silo in your domain. So creating that interconnectivity, the cross-functional view, if anything, the art of the possible, like really, can I get dorm student life data and how that connects to my enrollment management data is no longer a problem? Yes, that's no longer a problem. More importantly, that's how you will be successful as an AI leader.
I agree.
Okay.
And you don't have to think about data as this pristine Excel spreadsheets or data in your SIS or your CRM. Like, data now can come in a lot of different forms, and unstructured data and knowledge sources is really important. So things like policies, things like documents, things like PDFs, words is unstructured data, right? Like, so that's textual data, video data, audio data, like all of that stuff becomes really important. And if you have access to that and think about how valuable that can be to an organization, you as a leader, as an orchestrator, you're going to need to kind of tap into that and kind of become a wrangler of that type of data.
And to connect that mindset of data knowledge, data sources to the first principle, rethinking workflows. Oh, now I'm going to be able to solve the problem of getting leads through the lens of, oh my gosh, alumni outcomes or residence life, whereas before we never made those connections. Speaking of connections, and I know you have a lot to say here, so let me just basically set up the stage. As a leader, you need to start managing AI deployments in 2025 with a very different perspective. And this is where experimentation is going to be key. You will fail with one AI project for sure. It's impossible for you to come and say, I did 5 projects and they all were gangbusters, fully adopted, and they're basically working fantastic. It's naive. And the best way to do this acceleration of experimentation and increasing your rates of success is through the lens of partnership. And this is where a new mindset is needed. Look, for us leader, the way we looked at vendors, this is the vendor that I have that is doing AI, and expecting that they have solved all the problems, that's also naive because the same things that is happening to the partners, it's happening to you, that they're trying to figure out how their technologies, their services adapt to this incredible technology called generative
Right.
AI
From
and
a
whatnot.
first principles. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
So the partnership vendor relationship needs to go to a next level of how we set up our pilots and the experimentation using AI. Artists, I know you have a ton of things to add here and also very interested in the examples that you have seen it, but expand on this idea of how vendors in the partnership needs to be rethought for AI in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, ed tech or higher education is very risk adverse, right? And technology adoption is never, there's very few leaders in there. We see schools like ASU, for example, Arizona State University, becoming partnering with OpenAI last year, and they were one of the first. OpenAI didn't know how to build products for higher education. They didn't know how to price it. They didn't know how to, what features were needed to deploy to faculty, to deploy to students, to deploy to organizations like that. So if ASU would have stayed back and said, no, you come to us when you have something ready and proven, then they would not be where they are today, where they have a majority of their faculty, they have students adopting it, so if they came in with that mindset of, I'm not touching this until it's ready, until it's proven and somebody else is doing it, then you're basically a laggard and you're not benefiting from that and you're behind, right? So the mentality of AI becoming a transformational change, you need to be a participant, an active participant in that change and in that build out and how it gets deployed and essentially provide feedback, because it's going to, we talk about ROI in years, right? 2 years, 3 years sometimes for this large ERP implementations, 4, 5, 6 years sometimes, right? So it's like, by that, if we look at that lens of technology adoption of AI through the same lens, like you're not going to have that data in order to make a decision that is risk adverse. So to say, oh, I'm going to implement this platform or I'm going to implement this AI component, and I know because they have 5 years of experience and they have implemented in 5 different institutions, and this is the ROI that they get. We just don't have enough of that data, that ROI data right now. But with smaller experimentations, we do have a lot of it, and we can be an active participant. So we can set up pilots, or we can set up, kind of boundaries to do that. So the partnering part becomes super important. As somebody who we're working with schools to, to move these projects forward, I'll do everything possible to make sure that a project is successful if the partner of the president or our champion on the other side is saying, hey guys, I understand that this is not ready yet, but yeah, we're willing to kind of work with you. And over the next 4 weeks or month, we want to provide a couple, we want to test it here, we want to test it there. Let's see how it works. We're going to provide feedback and then have it ready. This past 3-4 weeks during the Christmas break, we have deployed our voice assistants with a few institutions, but we would never deploy that if those institutions were coming back and saying, hey, we need real data that this works. It's like, this is brand new. We just talked about it last week, how OpenAI made these real-time voice assistants possible, which is the cutting edge technology. So how can we give you data that it works unless we actually test it out and we kind of implement it and deploy and then we iterate on it?
Love that.
So very, very passionate about this co-creation, partnering, and experimentation, and being an active participant.
Yeah. So if you are an AI master and you will become an AI orchestrator, start thinking about your vendors and your high value partners differently. Specifically, 4 things that I want to mention. Create these pilot programs that are small with a very clear objective. How do I bring in Element now to engage my athletes. Very, very small. Think about that, right? And co-designed. Artists mentioned the word co-designed, I don't know, 15 times right now. Co-designed the solutions. Know that element, knows the machinery and the AI, but we haven't done athletics the way you need it, University X, right? And leverage that expertise, that deep bench that the vendor has in help that co-design. Because what is going to happen in 26 and 27 is that this partnership is going to come a next stretch. So this, you're not only building small pilots, but you're going for a long-term alliance, if you will. Artists, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was actually, so it's not that we don't have the experience in that. It's that the technology is brand new and we are the experts of the technology and we understand it, but we're looking at these processes from a first principle. So we're
Exactly.
co-designing. It's not a matter of like, can we deploy it for you? It's we're co-designing from a first AI first approach the processes that you have. So that goes back to change management, how we can help with the change management. And we know that higher education traditionally, doesn't necessarily build good products internally. Like they're not good at building products, they're not good at building technology internally. So it's all, it's a vendor or it's a partner, technology partner relationship that happens quite a bit. So
Well, artists, this is kind of bringing us to the end of this episode. As a reminder, everybody, we love for you to think about a new 2025 resolution of becoming your best self in AI. And it starts with being an individual contributor. We spoke about having the mastery through one tool. We also spoke about how you start thinking about creating your own automated workflows through agents and then keeping up with your own methodology. But as you bring that individual contribution to a leadership role as a AI champion or an orchestrator, we really want you to start thinking about how do I bring in adoption as my metric that I will be I'll be operating on the change management significantly, and I'll be operating through the lens of first principles, rethinking workflows, that connecting data sources is no longer a problem. It's actually the more your knowledge sources and data is interconnected, that's the more successful you're going to be. And we know that the experimentation and partnership, that's the gangster move for you to be a hyper successful leader. So with that, we like to close, and AI is a marathon, not a sprint. AI is a long-term play, not a sprint. So these things that we're talking about are not going to happen in a week, but it's through the course of the year. And specifically, as a individual, stay curious, but as a leader, stay open, right? And this is probably one of the most exciting times for me, JC, to be doing what I do, because in 25, my gosh, it's going to be so, so fun and interesting to do what we do. The CEO, the head of AI, the educational technologies, the whatever is it that I fill in the blanks through the lens of AI. So it's super, super exciting. And I cannot wait for you, artists, and everyone listening to figure this out. Artists, your closing thoughts here?
I think you did a really good job.
Well, come on, it was all ChatGPT telling what to say. All right, send us off, close us
Nah,
off, artists.
I think this is one of my favorite episodes. Like we can go on and talk forever about organizational change, AI adoption, and AI mastery. So again, it starts with leadership. So if you're an individual contributor, AI is going to be that ticket for you to kind of advance through the organization, provide value for the organization, and step quickly through and become a place where you can become a leader, driving value for your school, your institution, your department. If you're a leader, you got to get there very quickly. You got to empower your people to actually do the experimentation and provide the tooling and provide the framework for them. But also you have to be open and understand and bring in external help and be open to learning yourself and being a practitioner yourself as well. You have to do that in order to kind of move forward. So like JC said, very, very exciting. 25, it's an incredible year for enterprise value creation with AI. tools are getting better. It's going to be the year of agents. Things are going to get, more and more specific to your workflows, to our particular verticals around marketing, enrollment, student success. We're going to have so many great tools and so many great manifestations. It's a matter of how do we make sure that we're always thinking about that end consumer, that experience on what we're providing and the product that we're providing, and how can we make that better and removing friction. So I'm very excited.
There you have it for 2025 being a defining year in all things AI. So thank you, everybody. We will see you in our next episode. Stay tuned because 2025 is not only the AI year, but many exciting things coming your way. So for this awesome episode, and we'll see you around.
Till next time, everybody. Leave those reviews and rate us on everywhere you listen to this episode. Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.